Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
The Stock Movers Podcast, your roundup of companies making moves in the stock market, harnessing the power of Bloomberg data.
I'm Carol Massar along with Tim Stenovec. Let's take a look at some stocks on the move. JetBlue plans to hasten cost cuts by eliminating some flights, ending service to a number of cities, and restructuring its leadership ranks as economic uncertainty feeds weaker than expected demand for travel. I don't think I'm talking out of turn. You and I came back on a red eye on JetBlue. It was in Mint.
Wow, Carol Massar, you're fancy.
Well, I remember when they introduced it. It was a big deal in their business class or first class, and it's really nice for if you're going across the country. Having said that, mine had a piece missing on the side, and it was taped. And it just reminded me, and I want to bring in our Mary Schlangenstein, who's Bloomberg News U.S. Airlines reporter. She's out there in her Dallas bureau. Mary, it reminded me, I remember when all of JetBlue planes were spanking new, and it was interesting.
TVs.
Yeah, it was really cool, and the endless snacks, even if you weren't in business, or but it was just interesting for me to be sitting in that plane, and there was a piece missing, and then they had taped over another part, and I thought, wow, times have changed. They've got more legacy issues than they did certainly when they started, but give us some context on kind of where JetBlue is when it comes to all the major carriers that are out there.
Well, because JetBlue is primarily focused on the U.S. market, it's suffering, just like a lot of other carriers are, from a downturn in demand in the U.S. And this really started earlier in the year and was a big surprise to airlines that had expected a really profitable and strong demand year in 2025. But when Trump imposed the tariffs and people became very worried about a recession, about inflation, about trade wars, then domestic demand really fell off a cliff. And that was in April. A lot of the carriers came out and they withdrew their full year guidance because things were so uncertain. And so basically what JetBlue is saying is this hasn't gotten any better for us, and we're going to have to take more steps to cut costs.
Hey, a question that I have about this, Mary, is really when it comes to what is unique about JetBlue and why it's struggling so much. Yes, there have been a couple failed tie-ups. The Spirit thing didn't work out. The American Airlines thing didn't work out. It's trying to do something with United that's going to be over the next few years. What is is the challenge to Mint that it's not an ultra low cost carrier, but it's also not one of the big three? Is that the problem?
That's part of the problem. It's not. It's also not a full service global airline, although it has some international routes. But it's kind of stuck in the middle. It's really a niche player, and that's what it was trying to get away from when it tried to acquire Spirit and did the alliance deal with American. It really needed more heft to compete with the bigger players in the U.S. industry. And of course, it didn't get that. And so Joanna Geraghty's been trying to restructure the operations at JetBlue. She's pulled them back to their original focus areas of the U.S. Northeast and along the East Coast. And the situation in terms of demand has just really been tough in those areas.
All right. So I don't know. What are you hearing? What's the outlook? I mean, how much time do you give? I mean, listen.
They're running on borrowed money right now. Well, that's the how long do they have?
No, right. I mean, when companies are going through changes, you give them a little bit of time. But Tim makes a really good point. You got to look at the balance sheet and wonder what kind of pressures they have right now.
Yeah, and it really hasn't been that long since Joanna Geraghty took over. Mm-hmm. But, they do have this United plan, doing the partnership with United, which they expect to really help them a lot. It's going to give United access to some routes at JFK, going to give JetBlue access to some slots at Newark. And so they expect a lot out of that. They're also partnering on their travel bookings venture that JetBlue has, which should bring a lot of added revenue into JetBlue. But you have to remember that, their executives spend a lot of time focusing on these failed deals, and they're really having to go back and focus on basic operations at JetBlue, and it's just a tough time to have to do that.
I'm so glad you went there, though, with United, because United was down as well. Is it because of the JetBlue news, and there's some kind of read into, all right, if JetBlue's having issues, does that mean United is too? Help me tie that up.
No, I think really, if you look, all the airlines are down by a pretty good amount. And so I think it's probably broader market forces at work here, things that are affecting a lot of variation of stocks and not just the airlines.
Okay, so obviously a lot of headwinds facing the entire industry.
Totally.
Moving forward, it sort of builds on what Carol was asking about when it comes to the future of this company. Is this, I'm not going to ask you to make predictions because that's not the business that we're in, but is this a company that analysts say can succeed in its current iteration, or is it going to have to become part of something else?
No, I don't think anybody's predicting or forecasting that they're going to have to become part of something else. Merger and acquisition talk in the airline industry is non-ending. It's always going on. But I haven't seen really anybody focusing on the fact that JetBlue needs to get a deal done as soon as possible. Again, I think the alliance with United is seen as a big feather in their cap and something that is going to pay off for them.
The Stock Movers Podcast from Bloomberg Radio. Check back with us throughout the day for the latest roundup of companies making news on Wall Street. And for the latest market-moving headlines, listen to Bloomberg Radio live. Catch us on YouTube, Bloomberg.com, and on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app.